Who's ready for some jazz? All right, on the bandstand is the Sebastian High School Jazz Band. And tonight they are not under my direction. They are under Mr. Troy Wiley's direction. Let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Wiley. Mr. Wiley is a student intern from Florida State University. He's been with us at the Sebastian River High School Band program since January. He's about to graduate, we think, in just a couple weeks if we let him go. But he's been an integral part to our band program here since January, and this has kind of been his project to get the band ready, the jazz band ready for the concert here tonight at the park. So you're in for a real treat. This is Mr. Troy Wiley and the Sebastian River High School Jazz Band.
about the jazz band? Let's give it up for the jazz band again. So that first tune that we started with really kind of evolved from a warm-up that we started to do a couple months ago. It was just a chord progression that the rhythm section did to do. We call it blues for a sound check. Essentially all it is a chord progression over a set of chords to sound check the rhythm section, and we kind of evolved it to include a little bit of everybody. So that one was pretty much completely improvised, and if you don't know what that means that they make it up right on the spot, and that's a really common thing in jazz music. You'll hear a lot of improvised solos tonight. So they started out improvising solos, then we had a section where they echoed. That means one of the players would play an idea and then the band would answer them. That's completely unwritten, so let's give it up for these kids again for being able to do that tonight. So to start, we're gonna play a tune called Afro Blue. It's by Mongo Santa Maria, and he's a famous Afro-Cuban composer. Afro-Cuban style is more or less the mixture or the hybrid style of African culture with Cuban culture, so you get a little bit of everything in there. And on this tune, you're gonna hear Lucas Rendell on the trombone, Katie Stadler on the trombone, Tyler Urbanzik on the trumpet, Emma Albrecht on the trombone, Ali Fahey on the guitar, and Lee Stone on the Barry sax. And this is Afro Blue by Mongo Santa Maria. again, that was Afro Blue by Mongo Santa Maria. And let's give it up for those soloists one more time. So, the next couple tunes that we're going to be playing on our set list differ pretty much a lot in style. We have a pretty hard funk tune coming up called Pick Up the Pieces. Some of you may have heard it. It's a pretty popular tune by the 1974 Average White Band. Their leading member is Roger Ball. He's a saxophonist, so big surprise, you're going to hear a lot of saxophone on this tune. All the saxophone section's going to be featured. Then following that, we're going to slow it down with a nice laid-back swing tune entitled Sugar. It comes from the late Maynard Ferguson band. It has a really short head tune, short melody, and then it opens up to, again, a lot of soloists. So here's Pick Up the Pieces by the Average White Man.
Just a shot.
So, I know that the kids love those two tunes that we just played, See, we meet fourth period, which happens right before our lunch break. And every day after we finish rehearsing, I go in to eat my lunch and I'm listening out into the band room, and about half of them are out there either playing Pick Up the Pieces or Sugar. So I know that that's probably their favorite tunes because they play it all the time. And I hope you guys liked it just as much. Okay? Thank you. The next couple tunes that we have on our list is Body and Soul. Some of you may be familiar. This is a very standard jazz tune. It has hundreds, if not thousands, of different versions for it. One of the most popular versions, however, is the John Coltrane recording. This is Body and Soul. We're going to feature senior tenor sax player Casey Cole playing the tenor sax melody. And then following that, we have a tune that we actually just started working on like a week ago. We needed more music, so we pulled out the next tune and brushed it off kind of fast, so hopefully it goes well. And that's going to be Stardust by Hoagie Carmichael with lyrics by Michael Parrish. With this tune, there were over 1,500 different recordings, so it's one of the most recorded tunes in American culture. It has a lot of syncopated rock rhythm, so you'll hear a lot of that. And that one is also featuring senior tenor sax Casey Cole.
More songs.
I love you, Casey.
Okay, real quick, we have a couple cars that are blocking some people. I don't know why they would want to leave this concert, but they're having somewhere that they need to be. So there's a raspberry color Mitsubishi license plate 258PKZ, gray Nissan Altima, EVT S34, and a black Jeep Grand Cherokee 6103QE. Cars are blocking a car that needs to get out. But while I have the microphone, just want to reiterate to you that some of our band students are walking around with some band shirts that are for sale. There's some card magnets that are for sale as well, and they're also passing out some tickets for our Twilight concert with our Jazz and Steel Band at Captain Hiram's on Tuesday, May 24th. We hope to see you guys there. We're passing it back over to the Jazz Band.
us. Again, that was Casey Cole, featured on both of those tunes. It's funny, when Casey was talking about practicing these tunes, she said, "It's more fun and easy to practice this on my clarinet because it's easier to sit on my bed and practice." And if you don't know, the clarinet and the tenor saxophone have very similar fingering, so it transfers over. But I think she still did a pretty good job. So nice job. Up next is a tune called Blue Rondo a la Turk. It's another jazz standard written by Dave Brubeck in 1959. It utilizes a rhythm from Turkish street music. You'll notice the rhythm. It's a very syncopated 9/8 rhythm. It doesn't sound very like you can't clap along to it. I'll just say that. And while David Brubeck was traveling the world, he heard these musicians playing this rhythm, and he asked them about it. And he said, "Well, this rhythm is to us what the blues is to you guys." And by you guys, he was referring to Americans. And back in the 50s and 40s, the blues was a very, very popular style that was going all around the country. So again, this is Blue Rondo a la Turk by David Brubeck. notice the play on rhythms there, going back and forth between that Turkish rhythm and the swing sections that are more common to American culture. It's a pretty fun tune. That one featured Patrick Dunn on the trumpet and Colin Willis on the alto saxophone. Colin and Dylan, I mix their names up all the time. They're both blonde, they both fish, and they both play the alto saxophone. And they're both really good, so you can't blame me. So, next on our list, we have a tune that most of you are probably familiar with. It's titled, I Can't Stop Loving You. I don't know if you've ever heard it before, but it's originally written by Don Gibson in 1957 as a country hit, but then later, the more popular cover made by Ray Charles was done, and that sat at the #1 on the Billboard Top 500 Billboard #1 for 5 weeks. So it's a very popular tune back at that time. On this one, you're going to hear Emma Albrecht on the trombone, Blake Losey on the trumpet, Colin and Dylan on the alto saxophone. Here's I Can't Stop Loving You.
have a Boston Graham.
Can you guys understand now how I can confuse Colin and Dylan? They sound almost exactly the same on alto. But yeah, they're both very good players. Great job on all the solos by Emma and Blake as well. Moving on, we're gonna slow down, play another ballad for you. Who's ever heard of George Gershwin? Raise your hand if you ever heard of George Gershwin, any of his music. So, he wrote a tune called Embraceable You. It's a jazz ballad, and we're gonna feature our trombonist, our third trombonist, and vocal extraordinaire, Katie Sadler on the vocals. This tune is written in 1928, and it was published for an operetta titled East is West, and it was eventually published in 1930 as a Broadway musical titled Crazy Girl. So here we go. This is going to feature Katie on the vocals, and it's entitled Embraceable You by George Gershwin.
Testing. Love all the many charms about you. Above all, I want my arms about you. Don't be naughty, baby. Come to mama, do
it's such a nice tune. Gives me all the feels. Yeah, let's give it up for Katie one more time. She does such a lovely job with that. You guys enjoying your night? Good thing we have good weather and it's not windy blowing all the music around and super hot, so we planned it this way for you guys, so you're welcome. Next up, we're gonna feature our senior bari sax player named Lee Stone. The kid can put some air through the horn, I'll tell you. He can play very, very loud. It's pretty awesome. He's gonna be featured on a tune called Wave. It's more or less like a Latin laid-back tune. So here's Wave featuring Lee Stone.
My song. Yes.
All right, how about a hand for the Sebastian River High School Jazz Ensemble, Mr. Troy Wiley. They've got one more tune for you. They're going to play Q Balza for you, a nice Mario Balza Latin tune. But before they finish, just want to thank you very much for coming out to support us this evening. It's been our joy to perform for you, and we very much appreciate the support this incredible community gives our high school band. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you very much for your never-ending support of what we do.
So one thing I want to say before we play this last tune, I really want to give a shout out to those that don't really get much recognition but deserve all of the recognition, and that's our rhythm section over here. Without our rhythm section, they completely drive the bus, and you're gonna really hear them on this next tune, driving this tune forward. So that's Devin on the drum set, Ali Fahey on the bass, Simon on the bass and guitar. We got Tyler on the drums, and we got Danny on the drums, and James LeBranch on the piano. So shout out to the rhythm section. And that last tune is Kubalza. Thank you and have a good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for coming. Thanks our dancers, you're hired. We'll see you at Captain Hiram's on Tuesday, May 24th. Have a safe drive home.